All right, welcome back, my children. So I had a subscriber ask me how to do game assets, as well as level design. I'm not gonna really go over the level design. It's more of a pretty ambiguous topic. It's just something you have to learn yourself. But the simple asset creation and then importing it or exporting it from Blender to Godot is fairly straightforward. So I'm just gonna show you how I made a simple wall and then use that one wall to pretty much build out the entire building that you see in front of you right now. I'm not that good at texturing, as you can tell, so I will show you how I do my texturing, but it's not that good. Just a fair warning. So the first thing I did was I started off with the cube, and I just manipulated the cube's thickness in edit mode, and then I just duplicated the cube several times and manipulated the shapes and sizes to create the wall. So first thing I did was I created an end piece. This is the as you move over to the left, what we're doing is, or what I'm doing is creating just one module piece that I can use over and over and over again. So just having an end piece here, that way I have a spot where it will end is useful. And then I'm going to leave the other side open. That way it can connect to other pieces seamlessly. I don't know what the hell I'm doing here, to be honest with you. You should keep your walls thick. Um, but I am going to level off the right side. That way there's no discrepancies. And then I try to do the same with the top and the bottom. But I screw up and do that wrong. So yeah, make sure your axes are correct. And then after that, I think I set up a texture. Yeah. So I go into the material section here. I set up a simple texture. I click use nodes, and then I change the principled shader to a diffuse, and then go into its color and change it to an image texture. That way we can use an image that we create for the materials on the object. Now here, I just select everything in edit mode, and then I mark off all the same. Since all the shapes are simple cubes and rectangles, it's easy enough to just select everything and mark seams to create the faces that we need for our UV map. Since the objects are simple, then we don't have to do anything crazy. So I think here I'm just sizing things up and making things look a little nicer. After everything is seamed, yeah, everything's seamed, I just do a a UV unwrap. That way I can get all of the UVs on a single image. And then here I'm going to create the texture that I need for words are hard, all those UVs. So, like I said, I'm not that good of a texture. I'm not going to really go over what I'm doing here. This is mostly very simple textures. Like I said, I'm not that good. So all I did really was I just drew a whole bunch of random lines. Then I created a layer for the shadows and the highlights. Just really just changing the opacity of each layer. That way they're as strong or as light as I need them. Here I'm just adding a little extra detail with using a noise texture and then going in with the darker spots and adding more shadows. And then I'm going to go over those shadows with extra highlights. That way it looks like there's actual depth to it. Like I said, not very complicated. It doesn't look all that good, but it's serviceable. And then here I just add, again, like I said, the extra highlights. After that, I'm going to add another layer for a bunch of little specks, which I use with an RGB noise texture, I think. And then I just do the exact same thing. I just change its opacity down to something that is very subtle, but it's just to add a little bit more grit to the texture itself. That way it doesn't look so flat. And then after that, I just go over it with a couple of other paint brushes, and then I just lower or increase the opacity. Then after that, I go back into Blender. I look for those textures that I created. That way I can add it to our model here. If I remember correctly, I just unwrap the main face for the wall. That way I can just use the one texture for that, because I'm going to use a different texture for the, I guess you call it the beams or the support. I skipped the part of me fiddling around with this because I only want to use this one texture for the wall, but it just didn't look right with the support beams. So I wound up just using a texture from a game I'm working on. yeah, the game I'm working on instead. Um, but you'll see that soon. I'm right now just trying to fix this texture here because I see some weirdness. I think it's not connecting all the way. Yeah, that's it. It doesn't connect all the way. So, yeah, so all I'm doing is just fixing that up here. That way it looks seamless. As you can see here, I've already cut ahead here. Um, I don't know what I'm doing right now. Okay, I'm just checking to make sure I have the proper texture from my other game. And like I said, this was just to differentiate it and make it look a little nicer. But I created the texture pretty much the exact same way as I showed you earlier, or sped through earlier. So yeah, I'm just using this trim here to create extra details or whatever. Okay, everything looks good. After this, you're gonna have to go in and add a modifier. I added the array modifier. I should be headed to that right about now. Anytime past me. Okay, there we go. So as you'll see here, it pretty much, yeah, pretty much creates a seamless little wall there, and then I can, using the count here, I can make it go as far as I need it to go. I think I chose about 7. Then I just duplicated that and then made my extra walls here, leaving an opening there. I just created a cube to cut those off. That way they look like they're being supported by something bigger. This wasn't textured at all. I just didn't see any need to continue showing them more textures. And yeah, so yeah, just duplicating the walls again, just to make a simple square. And then I just take those support beams that I created, or that cube, and put it at the end there. That way they all look all nice and dandy. Here I'm going to lower or get rid of some of the... Oh, no. I'm going to show you how to create some variation with the texture just by moving it around. Since the texture I made is seamless, you should be able to just move it all over the place and no one would be the wiser. Then here I just lowered this down here. This is just to create an opening for the level itself. That way we can add like a door or something. If you're going to add doors or whatnot, or windows that you can go through, I would recommend not adding them in Blender. Instead, just creating a separate model, like your door model, a separate door model or a separate window, and then adding it while you're in the game engine. That way you can animate it if you need to. So yeah. I think the next thing I'm going to show you how to do is the next thing I decided to do is create the collision shapes. It looks like I'm applying all of the array modifiers to the walls here. You're going to have to do that because when you export it over, for whatever reason, Blender ignores the modifiers, so you have to do that. So once you have all the modifiers in, we're going to start doing the collision shape. All you have to do is create a simple box, and then as long as that box is named collision only, as you can see here on the screen here as I put that in, once it's exported over, Godot will automatically recognize that it's a collision object. So I'm just going to have this cube here as that collision object, and then I'm just going to trace over the walls. That way the collision is coherent. So that's pretty much all I did there. It doesn't have to be a single piece, by the way. It can be a whole bunch of separate blocks. As long as it's the same object, then it doesn't really matter. So, and you can have multiple objects with that name, even if it says collision only .001, 002, or whatever. Godot will still recognize it as a collision object. So that's just something to know. So if you have something more complicated, maybe you have a roof or something, then you can have multiple different collision shapes and have that same naming convention. File, and then we're going to export, and then we're going to do collada, which is the .dae. You can do the gltf. I just prefer this one here. Then once you have this there, make sure you hit selection only. Is everything selected? No, it is not. Make sure everything's selected. Then export, collada, selection only. This is to make sure that if you have any other layers hidden or whatever, it doesn't import those things. And then after that, I think that's the only thing we need to do. So we're going to export this. I'm just going to export it on my desktop. That way I can get to it. Let's create a new folder, and we'll call this delete, because I'm going to delete it after this, and then we're just going to export that. Now that the object is exported, you can just drag and drop it in to your new scene. Here I'm just going to show you quickly that the collision shape did in fact pop in, as you see right here. All those white little lines is the collision shape, so we're good to rock and roll. So now I'm just going to re-add the textures. I decided not to put the other texture that I had before. Like I said, it was for my game, so those aren't going to be with the file. So I just chose a random throwaway file. It didn't look right due to the fact that it wasn't UV unwrapped for that particular image, but you get the idea. So the game level is pretty much almost complete. All I'm doing right now is setting up a floor, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know what I'm doing there in Blender, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, I'm creating a floor here along with the collision shape, making sure they are even with each other, making it big enough to fit the entire level. And then I just throw a player controller from one of my other tutorials. I'll probably put a link up at the top so you can see that if you want to make your player character. And then after that, oh, I forgot to add the world, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, and I noticed that I forgot to add the player script for my tutorial. So everything should work now. And whenever I decide to put play, I should be Gucci. Yeah, there you go. And as you can see, I'm able to walk around the level that I had made in Blender and export it over. And the collision should work. At some point, I should be able to show you that. Past me really needs to work on his speed here. But yeah, the whole thing works beautifully. And there you go. I'm showing that the collisions do in fact work there. So yeah, like I said, game assets, or I should say game level design, is a little bit more of a tricky subject. So this should at least get you started on your assets, your asset creations, excuse me. And yeah. So hopefully you learned something. And until next time, my children, farewell.